Hello, welcome to this week's edition of Cow Daily. As you can see, I'm still in the broom cupboard. Plans didn't exactly go to plan. Honestly, I've been talking to you before when on air. Those who don't know, I'm recording this from me Mars, right? And I grew up in a council estate, which is fucking mental. And I'm sure this might be the first ever live murder on a podcast ever. Not by me or anything, but it's absolutely raj outside. And I've been talking to you, Alice, haven't I, before I went on air, and I was like, can you hear anything? And
I'm like, nah.
this microphone, it only goes this way. If you had one of those ones that pick up sound like all around, shit, man. Like, how am I supposed to work under these conditions? Fucking crazy, mate, I'm telling you. So if I mean, there's somebody's been donuting a motorbike around as well. That's Raj. It's just a Raj old yard, you know. You know about Raj yards, don't you?
Indeed. Yeah, so that sounds like a bit of a spicy night for you.
Dude, seriously, like, I'm not joking. I might have to like just I can't. The thing is, I can't say what's happening because I'm not a grass, right? But there's some shit going on. But this is just like how like places like this are. And I mean, so I want to bring up with you before we go into like the slots that were planned. And it's like, I mean, a good example of it is, it's like there's a lot of middle class bands around, like your Mumford and Sons. I mean, I suppose they're like landed gentry bands, so one above. What's a good example? Keane, big bedwetting bands like that, Coldplay, right? But there's not as many working class bands. Why do you think that is?
Well, we've just literally been talking about. Can you hear me? You all right?
We are, yes. I've just heard things smashing out there as well, by the way.
I thought you couldn't hear me anymore.
Well, no, I can hear you. I was listening to things getting smashed and shit.
Well, it's access to everything. That's what it's going to be. It's about access to instruments, access to spaces. I'm sure the pandemic has had a massive impact on people's ability to, it's affected everybody's ability to meet. So it's going to affect their ability to meet and make music. Everybody is poorer at the minute.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, also as well, there's just no space. Like, if you're gonna like, why are you putting your drum kit? I mean, I'm struggling to get like, I'm in this like box room which I basically grew up in, right? Like, where am I putting? Where you going? There's no garage to do it in. There's no like. It used to be like sort of youth projects or things like I think it's called the Bridge in Sunderland. That's like a music place which I think is still going. But there's not a lot left, so you haven't got any like space to do it in. And I mean, that's what I'm finding here, because obviously I've come back for a 1 week visit, ended up having to stay for 2. I've ended up having to just work on the floor because there's nowhere to work. So, and that's just doing like a podcast with a small setup like this, you know.
Yeah.
And also, it's all of the shit that's going off outside. Like, it's just honestly, I'm pleased I've got this microphone, but in some respects I'm not, because like people will get a real idea of how hard it is for people who want to try and progress in their lives, who just can't through sheer like situation or architecture, things of that nature. Like, architecture is important, where you're from is important, and sometimes you literally can't do things. And I mean, it's like I say, I'm finding it hard enough actually doing this now with like what I'm hearing over there. Seriously, I wouldn't be surprised if it'd be a fucking murder. I have no idea what's getting smashed up. There's loads of shouting, screaming, rah, rocking, rah. But this is what I realize now, that like I was talking to my partner about this recently as well. She didn't grow up like this, you know. It's just from a different world, really. And like, I've come back and I'm just like, I've had a real identity crisis kind of thing, because like I'm definitely from here. I'm very proud of where I'm from and all of that. But at the same time, I'm like, how I experience this differently. This isn't normal to us anymore. So it's, I suppose, like I was reading some like psychology thing about like like how traumatic it can be without even knowing, like growing up in working class communities, because you're just surrounded by mental shit all the time. I mean, the cops were like around here yesterday. They're fucking around here all the time.
Yeah, but that's, you know, when we talk about people with mental health problems and stuff and things like that. Obviously, it doesn't matter what, you know, social class you're in. Anybody can experience mental health issues, but a lot of the difference is the space that you have, you know, to have that. So it's, you know, if you kind of, you know, from, you know, if you're absolutely skint, you know, you don't have a house at all, you know, you're more likely to have like you know, a very, very public sort of crisis episode that everybody can see because it's in the middle of the street, or
literally happening right now,
because you've got like thin walls and stuff and things like that.
That's a huge part of it as well, because
Yeah.
like obviously it's like semi-detached or it's terraced, so you can hear everything through the walls because it's council estate walls and they're just made out of cheese.
Like ours was masonette, so you know, like masonette, or a terrace. There was a terraced house as well. Normally we were the ones making the noise and kicking off though, rather than us being able to hear other people doing it. It was like our household.
What about that? So anyway, I mean, like I'm leaving in a couple of days, like, so, you know, it'll be to a completely different environment, but it's been interesting for us, you know, like, cause I've obviously lived away, as you know, for a bit, and I think I've spent about, at the most, a couple of months in England in the last 18 months. And it's been a bit of an eye-opener. And you know yourself, I've lived in a lot of different places over the years. I'm like mid-40s now, you know, I've been out and lived, but I've never experienced the return like I'm experiencing this now. And I suppose I just wanted to talk to you about it because it's like happening right now. And I could literally open the fucking curtains when we're done with this and I could see anything. Literally throughout this whole show, anything could happen. Anything. And that's madness. It's like, but that was what it was like growing up. Like, you would play football and you just knew at some point you were going to have to like run the gauntlet or fight because somebody would try and nick your football. You know what I'm saying?
I try and think, like, weirdly, like this probably in anybody who knows it, I know you certainly do, like one of the quietest places I kind of lived from in terms of inside the building, there was the Rocket Flats. It was a bit of a spicy area, and like.
Well, should we explain that it's the ones from the Tudor Crisps advert from back in the day?
It was like, you know, it was like a brutalist high rise, and it was called, you know, it was called Derwent Tower, but everybody called it the Rocket Flats because it had like these massive, like 5 massive buttresses kind of coming out the side, which kind of came in a diagonal to the floor, and yeah, so if things booted off outside, you would hear every single word and smash and scream of that. But if it was coming from inside, you didn't, because like it was all made out of reinforced concrete, so it was actually like normally pretty soundproof. So unless it was right outside or in the corridors, because the doors weren't exactly the greatest in there.
No, they weren't. I used to go and hang out there a lot.
Yeah. Mine looked like driftwood. It had been booted in that many times.
I'm not surprised. It was a spicy old place. Yeah. Definite urine in the lift times and that. Yeah, do you know something about the Rocket? That, like, I mean, for people outside the area, hold tight. We're coming. I'll do the intro and everything soon, but we really want to talk about this shit, you know. Do you know that the Rocket, right? It was you know, as high as it was as deep underneath. When it was first built, there was like a spiral car park.
Yeah, It was.
I knew that.
Yeah, I knew it had a spiral. Well, I could see it. I never went in it because by that point, when I was living there, it had started to flood because they basically was sinking. Is what happened. So it was. It was starting to fill with water, stagnant, so it was all grilled off. But yeah, it had like an underground spiral car park, and it was, but like everybody told them, don't build on that land, like it won't be very good. And then there
they did.
Yeah, it did.
Sorry, they were just chucking working class people in there, and we don't matter, do we? Anyway, we'll move on from this one. How you been anyway? How you been? What have you been doing?
I've been all right. I've like for the past, when you get an earworm stuck in your head, and
I do.
and it gets to about day 5, and you start like kind of like feel like you're losing your mind a little bit. So
Yes, I know that feeling very, very much indeed. Yeah.
yeah, and it's never normally a song you even like,
No.
or one that you even know that well. But at the minute, and I know why it is, I will explain in a second. But at the minute, it has been "Ain't No Doubt" by Jimmy Nail
Oh,
playing.
fuck off. That's a horrendous one to have. A woman like you's no good for me.
She's lying.
She's lying.
I do love Jimmy Nail though. He's a national treasure. But so the reason this has come about is because I've got like this ritual of like every Friday night just decompressing from everything and watching like Top of the Pops 2.
Right.
So you have like 2 episodes on, and it's great at the minute because we're in 1992. So it's just such a random mix. You've got loads of like rave stuff, and you've got like, so you've got like the KLF and like
I remember them on
then
the
you've got like
Top of the Pops.
Shakespeare's sister, and at the minute you've got like Jimmy Nail is number 1 and has been for the past couple of episodes. And
Was it No Doubt number 1 like more than 1 week or number 1 at all?
Yes, it was. I'm not sure how many weeks it was number 1 for, but it's from watching the episodes, it's been definitely more than 1.
Sorry, there's just somebody being murdered out there. It's legit, seriously. I'm going to show you something that I actually found. Do you remember this? Hold on. Oh, you can't really see because my lighting's all fucked.
Oh, yeah. I used to have that.
Box set.
Yeah.
These are the things you find, all of them.
I think I had that exact same one.
Blast from the past, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the vibe in these places. And also I found this as well, which is kind of different. The Snoop Dogg G pen. It's a mixed bag in this house.
Beautiful, love it.
The beautiful time. It's like, honestly, it's like being in like a Blue Peter time capsule, but it's your life. Like I've just been like, what the fuck? It's me Narnia books. No way. I used to love them, and it kind of links into what I've been saying, because like when things were like Gan and Raj when I was young, I would just escape into C.S. Lewis books and like other things and just sit and read and stick my headphones on or whatever, I think that's why I became a bit bookish, because it was a way of escaping your general environment, wasn't it? Actually, before we move on, there's quite a few comments, so let's see what people are saying. Right, Nick Stoker. Oh yeah, he makes a really good point here, actually. I've got to say, I think another reason there are fewer working class bands is there is a shyness about putting yourself out there in some respects. Mm-hmm. Nick, I think you're right. I think like middle class people have more confidence, and I think a lot of it comes from like what the privileged enough to be exposed to, and also not being exposed to. Right, what else we got? Nick also says, I live in a council estate here and people aren't afraid of having the music on loud on the evening. Don't disagree with the point you're making, though. Nick, if only it was just music. The music of the damned, not the band, is what I'm hearing. Fucking hell, man. Brendan Farty is saying, loved rediscovering old stuff. Recently moved and rediscovered my limited edition Gollum statue from the Two Towers. Yes.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Also, FCK PTN, that's fuck PTN. I remember watching Jimmy and Spender. Same. Do you remember his white Cosworth? Because do you remember? Do you like round here in the 90s, the Ford RS Cosworth was the ultimate thing that you would want. I saw a one recently, and I don't know if it was a spoof or not, right? But I saw one recently. I said to my partner, oh man, I'm just going to totally get a Cosworth when I can afford it. And she was like, you're not. You're not. I was like, a Cosworth and all of that. And like a Cosy. How? And she's just right over her head. She's like, you're just not getting one. I was like, fucking hell. She would go on or not. She would just be like, you've got a Cosworth, whatever. But she was just being funny, you know. But
I don't remember that. I remember when he chased a metro through the tunnel. That's hilarious.
Oh yeah, man. Fast runner, wasn't he?
Yeah.
For those who know, it was really not the one. Right. So, hold on a minute. What's Joanne saying? Is this your new home? Joanne, no, it's not. You've obviously got on this late. It's the estate where I grew up, which was Raj, then wasn't Raj, and now is the Rajest it's ever been. Or maybe I've just like sort of moved out of it a long time ago and come back, and it just feels Raj, and it's always just been this Raj. I don't know, but it's kind of fun finding out. I'm kind of enjoying it in some respects, but also at the same time, we've now got to move on and talk about other shit. So before we do, though, as ever, if you'd like to go to the links in the description, subscribe to the Cow Daily YouTube channel. That would be belter. Also, you'll find there the mailing list. Really good to sign up to that. And once I've moved on and I'm in the new place next week, I'll be able to actually work, which will be great. Not just me mother cow stuff, but other things too. What happened is basically when we went for a ferry, right? You know all this, so just like went for a ferry. The ferry was delayed by 2 hours. We needed to connect on another ferry. We couldn't get that ferry because we would have had to have waited a week because we needed dog-friendly cabins. So now we've had to drive all the way back from bloody Wales, and now we're waiting a week. But people who want to know where I'm going, I don't want the Rozzers to know, but this top here is a clue. So for eagle-eyed people, if you know what this is, then that's where I'm going next. And I might tell you when I'm there. I might do some videos for the Patreon and that when we do it. Speaking of the Patreon, go to patreon.com/Cow Daily, and all of the things you can see on the screen, chat forum, other things too you can have. This week we are talking a little bit about an update about Sarah Everard and what's went on there. Also, we want to do a bit on like land reform, and it kind of fits in where it's come from. Is this kind of like for me when I've started researching stuff, some of the stuff like was out a couple of years ago and whatever, and we've kind of tied it together in the here and now. It's about the experience that I'm having about like space and how space like impacts you. So we'll do a bit about that. Also, a little bit about energy bills, and also the ultimate palate cleanser in the dystopian nightmare that is this world. Positive news. So I'll just read this out first on the Sarah Everard. Here it comes. Oh man.
That is tiny.
It's tiny. It's good because I do have it here, thankfully.
You have to have like
see, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like I had to work on the floor today. I wasn't in like a desk space, so I was like, right, that's cool. I had a limited amount of time to do it. Absolutely sucks though, doesn't it? It's like, how are you supposed to like get anything done? Like, just bear with us. I'll just pull it up. Just talk to us there, Alice, while I pull it up. Fucking hell. But it's just grist to the mill what I'm talking about. It's like you're trying to get like your shit done and you've got nowhere to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is about the court ruling against
it is indeed. And I have found it. So thank you, previous me, for all of your good works in saving everything that you do. So what it says there in that tiny lettering on the screen, Sarah Everard, vigil organisers, vindicated by landmark High Court ruling against the Metropolitan Police Force. Today's judgment is a victory for women. Last March, women's voices were silenced. Today's judgment conclusively shows that the police were wrong to silence us. The decisions and actions by the Met Police in the run-up to the planned vigil for Sarah Everard last year were unlawful, and the judgment sets a powerful precedent for protest rights. We came together 1 year and 1 day ago to organise a vigil on Clapham Common because Sarah Everard went missing from our neighbourhood. We felt sad and afraid. We were angry that women still weren't safe, and we were tired of the burden to stay safe always weighing on our shoulders. We organised it because as women we needed a space to stand together in solidarity, grief and defiance, and above all we organised it because it's wrong that women face violence and harassment every single day. We couldn't have imagined the far-reaching implications of our decision to organise, and certainly never imagined we would be here in the High Court a year later. But we couldn't stand by in the face of the Met Police's determination to prevent women from exercising their human right to protest. Hear, hear. We feel vindicated by today's judgment. This case exposes the Metropolitan Police's total disregard for women's human rights to assemble and expression. It shows that the Met Police's decision-making was flawed at every single step of the process. They got the law wrong last March, and the interim judgment from Justice Holgate said as such. Moving it on. And we're back. But rather than change their approach, they dug in their heels, closed ranks, and got the law wrong again. The Met Police, really? In the words of Lord Justice Warby, the MPS decision and communication were legally mistaken, simplistic, misinformed, and misleading. The implications of this judgment should reverberate widely. We hope that as Parliament considers giving the police greater powers to curb protests in the Police Court Sentencing and Crime Bill, that this ruling reminds everyone the importance of upholding our human rights. We believe it sets an important precedent for future protests and the way they are policed. We hope that those who face greater barriers to access and justice can benefit from the precedents that today's ruling sets on protest rights, because in pursuing this case, we have learned just how difficult and expensive it is to access justice and hold our institutions to account. We know we are lucky to have been able to take this case all the way to the High Court, a privilege not afforded to many. We thank our amazing legal team, and we are especially grateful to everybody who contributed to our legal fundraiser. Ta-da! What do you make of that, my friend?
Well, it's good news. You take, I think, as they said, you take victories where you find them. It's good. I think it was, I personally think it was the right decision. I find it a little bittersweet in some ways, because obviously yesterday we've also had the news round about the same time in Bristol, where it also kicked off there. That was more directed. It was more like a targeted kill the bill protests. However, there was a vigil for Sarah Everard on that, and during that vigil and the subsequent protests afterwards, there was a 26-year-old woman arrested called Jasmine York. So she's been in court, and it's come out yesterday that she has been jailed for 9 months. For her part, yeah. So she, despite she's got mental health issues, she's got other medical problems, and it doesn't look like she had access to her meds in the lead up to that as well, which certainly would have had an influence. So she's been. I was reading about what it was that she did. Alleged that a lot. It was it was all about incitement to riot rather than that she didn't attack anybody or anything like that. It was there was a few kind of quotes of things that she'd been shouting and stuff. A lot of it is stuff that you will hear on any sort of march. Things like whose streets are streets, quite a common sort of chant there. I think she was alleged to have been yelling ACAB at one point, which for the uninitiated is an acronym for All Cops Are Bastards. Which is
the uninitiated.
Yes, we can agree that's maybe a polarizing phrase. I'm
personally a made anarchist. It's much like the mafia when I get initiated into anarchism.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So she'd been shouting stuff like that, I think. And yeah, so she's got, she's going to prison for 9 months for that, and I don't agree with that decision really. But yeah, for this, I think the ruling against the Met Police, I do think it is the right one. Well, it just of course, shows they weren't listening. They weren't kind of, particularly why they were there. Why they were there. It's, Sarah Everard was murdered by a Met police officer. And I think that was what made their reaction during that protest even worse. And that's kind of how it came about. The vigil that is being talked about there in London, when that happened, that had been down to, when Sarah Everard was missing, them going around and knocking on houses and telling women to watch what they were doing and what they were wearing. I think that kind of felt really, it was about going around telling women to modify their behaviour there, and it was it's going to stick in people's throats.
Just a bit, yeah. I mean, I remember, we all remembered at the time, and it was absolutely disgusting. I mean, there's that, the image that was put forward in the press of I can't remember her name, but the redhead woman who, she was looking up and she was basically being chicken winged out by cops. I mean, that time was horrific as well, because obviously, we're all stuck in the house, and I think from that statement from them there, made up for them. I'm really, really happy for them.
Yeah.
I did read a tweet from the lady I just mentioned there, and she said she found out because a journalist had rang her up, and she was crying down the phone at the journalist because I think she went from like person at vigil in a like for one of the most horrific cases in recent history, a case by the way that like has removed a lot of trust from a lot more people, especially in and around London, towards the police. And rightly so, to be quite honest, because the way this was dealt with, the vigil, was absolutely and utterly disgusting. And it's like, I wouldn't say it gives us like a load of faith in the justice system. I mean, if you haven't got time to talk about this week, but what's going on with Assange is absolutely disgraceful, and we'll maybe do a little follow up. And if I was in the new studio, I would have probably done a follow up anyway on that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it gives us faith in the overall justice system, but it gives you a little bit. There's a little bit of justice, and I'll just lob this on the screen for listeners. Jamie Klingler, who was one of the ladies who put this to the High Court, it's just all them outside doing a whole "we did it" picture, and it's a beautiful thing to see, and that's the type of pictures that you want to see rather than the one that sort of defined that moment at the vigil, which was really quite haunting at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it's come about, and again, I think I definitely have less faith in the criminal justice system. It's come about because of them, because they've kept going at it, despite the fact that a lot of those activists, a lot of those women who were at the vigil, have been absolutely vilified in the comment sections, and they've been absolutely like insulted for all the fact that this was all about misogyny and everything like that, and people are going, oh no, women have got all of the rights, what are they complaining about? It's like they were still talking about women in a activists in a really disgusting way there, and I think that has to be taken into account as well, because they inadvertently became very, very public figures. Particularly the woman in the main picture, that was just seen like time and time again, like all across the world. But it's the same with the spy cops thing. It's nothing to do with the justice system working. It's like about activists having to be absolutely relentless and not letting these things drop out of the public eye before they get justice.
Do you think that the establishment, for want of a better word, will tie activists up in these like really long court cases that they know they probably can't win? But what it's doing is it's putting that it's always activists as a voluntary thing. It's putting their energies towards fighting that thing rather than actually fighting the issues that they were there to address in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to an extent, yeah. But I think that I think it is a very long. I've seen like barristers try to do it before, try to drag things out as long as they can so that people lose energy and drop it. Even with not kind of big high court cases like this, but even with kind of common criminal trials, it's if that you've been told that, okay, on this date in 2 months' time you've got to give evidence about the very worst thing that has ever happened to you before, and you're going to be thinking about that all of the time, wondering what's going to happen, and then you get there and then for some reason it's been adjourned for some absolute bullshit reason, somebody has and then it's kind of put even further back, and a lot of the people with that, depending on what it is, they can't necessarily always get access to counselling, because potentially their counselling notes can be requested by the court and used and kind of used against them. And then, so there's like some people who've been like waiting a year to kind of give evidence, knowing that in the back of their mind that date is going to be coming up. And for some people, it's too much for obvious reasons. And they go, right, I'm going to withdraw my statement.
Grim business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely shocking. I mean, these are like already traumatized people as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, like morally reprehensible isn't strong enough, but that's what it is.
And it's how that system can re-traumatize as well, and keep re-traumatizing and not allowing people to heal.
Totally, man. Totally. No doubt about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Maybe take some comments. No, go on. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, as well, and the other reason we need to kind of keep this in the public eye as well. I mean, it's been kind of a year since Sarah Everard was killed. How many women do you think it is that's been killed by men in the UK since then?
I don't know.
In a year. It's about 125. It's at least 125.
Bloody hell! So are these all known to the people? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is women who've they're not all necessarily known. It's women who've been killed by men, or where the main suspect is thought to be male. Anyway.
What the hell's wrong with people, man? It really boils me piss, all this, like, to say the least. It's like, I just don't understand how people can do things like that. If say again.
Yeah, we're just not seeing things change though, and these statistics haven't been vastly different for years and years and years, and this is why we have to keep talking about this.
I mean, I like, speaking to what I was speaking to before. I mean, I'm not one for ringing the cops, but I did in the last few years. I've done that a couple of times because I've heard somebody belting the shit out of a woman, and like, obviously was willing to go around there, but the cops did turn up and didn't need to do that. But you shouldn't have to be in that situation, should you?
No, like, absolutely not. And I've had to do it on public transport before.
I know you have. I know you have. And then that what you did actually became a global story. So.
Oh no, I wasn't even talking about that. That was.
Oh really? Just other times as well.
Yeah, it was going home with a really, really like insanely aggressive bloke who was basically like, I could like hear him telling his girlfriend he was going to kill her as soon as we got home. So yeah, it was did in that respect. He was going on about a knife that he had and stuff and things like that. So again, normally I'm a bit gobby, and I have been known to often intervene in these situations physically, which is the last incident you're referring to. That's one of those occasions. But yeah, it's it was kind of like one of those where I was just like, I think I'm going to make this worse if I try and confront this guy, and I'm probably going to get stabbed as well. So you do what you have to do sometimes. But
yeah, I mean, you've jogged my memory. One night I was out on a lash and I was walking through Biker, and massive bloke, like huge, like you heard the crack as he punched the woman that he was with to the floor. I was with one of my friends, and we like, oh, what you doing? Da, da, da. But we're next to Biker police station, so we thought, right, best thing we can do, run over, and it was shut. I don't know if it was like cutbacks, whatever. I don't know if it's still like that, but we're hammering on that thing. Eventually just rang 999, sat outside of the police station, mental, but cops turned up, sorted, he's carted off, belter.
But often with bystander, but the bystander effect, and nobody does anything. I mean, I remember, I was basically like groped in a bar by some bloke and turned around and, told him to F off. And the response was that he held a bottle to my neck in the middle of the bar, and, quite loudly telling everybody how he was going to rip my throat out and laughing. And, some people stood there and giggled. Some people pretended to hear it, but not one person did anything there. And I'd only popped in really briefly to see if my friend was there at lunchtime. It was like in the middle of the day. So I was handing something to my best mate, and ended up in that 5 minutes in a bar, and ended up like basically being threatened to be killed with nobody like helping. And that is probably the last time I ever went out on match day.
Yeah, match days are absolute meh.
Yeah.
What bar was it? Do you want to say or not?
It's on Pink Lane.
Shall I guess? It wasn't the Fourth. It was the one just up from the Fourth.
Yeah, just up from the Fourth.
And not the Jazz Club.
Yeah.
One beginning with R. Anyway, let's take some comments. Robert Grady says, if the right to protest is curtailed, then the systematic slump in people's rights and lives will only result in further violence against the state. History shows that that's how things tend to go. And like when people have nothing to lose, then they'll tend to put themselves in those type of positions. And I just don't know if like we've got a government who are willing to recognize these things. I think they're just so disconnected and think they're getting away with everything. And in a sense, they are, because you remember the Sue Gray report. Remember, I'm old enough to remember when the Sue Gray report was supposed to be imminently coming out. Where is the Sue Gray report?
Where is the Sue Gray report?
Where is Sue Gray?
Yeah.
She's just sitting off waiting for Dame Sue Gray. Is that how this one will go?
Well, that was the theory, wasn't it? And it's not looking entirely incorrect.
And just in the interest of balance, where's the Ford report, Labour Party? Where's that? Because that's been imminently coming out for the last millennia. So you know what the Ford report is? Like an investigation into allegations that people within the Labour Party basically tried to throw the election, because there was a like PDF document that was leaked, which was an internal investigation, and it's had quotes and everything like that. And I've been holding off like talking about this stuff because we want to see the Ford report, because obviously, you know, like allegations, etc., etc. You don't really want to put yourself in the firing line and want to wait. But nobody, where is it? We're being mugged off. Where's Sue Gray? Where's the Ford report? What the fuck is going on?
I think we've got more chance of George R.R. Martin releasing Winds of Winter before we ever see like either of those two documents. Like, he'll finally finish his book and that will be published before either of those. Yeah,
I think we've got more chance of C.S. Lewis knocking on my door asking if I want to go for a pint.
Yeah.
Absolutely rotten, this country, innit? Sorry about that, Englanders and flag shaggers, but it's absolutely disgusting. What else we got? Betty Whitehead, hello Betty. The lengthy court systems are set up to break before so they can't get justice. True story, it appears. What else have we got? Steve Jackson, where's the Ford inquiry report? He goes on to say, I was typing that first, honest. Great minds, my friend.
Great minds.
Happy days, man. So, if you would like to sign up for the mailing list, then please go to the link in the description. There is stuff coming out next week, I promise. It's been a mad one this last couple of weeks. Like, I swear to God, I cannot wait to get out of here. But never mind. By the way, this entire time I've been talking, and I want like professional points here. Like, it's crazy. Like, I'm going to look out there, and I guarantee there's a fence smashed in or something. It went right off. Fucking nuts. I'm going to take the dog out later to investigate, because I like that. It's fun. So anyway, we'll move on to land reform, eh?
Yeah.
Cool. So, like as I was saying earlier, but like just for the purposes of people who just joined, were land reforms are like really big one. Like in the 2019 Labour Manifesto, under Corbyn, they commissioned George Monbiot, like people know, environmentalist, well-known person, to write what was it, the Land Reform for the Many report, which is too dense to go into. So I've got like a few things that are around that, but I just wanted to mention that. Reason being, and it's the type of stuff that I was talking about earlier, it's about like space and what space does to your psychology. So what the first thing I wanted to talk about is, like, you mentioned George R.R. Martin, like Game of Thrones dude and all of that.
Yeah. And then he called him G.G. Martin, like a mixture of...
As in G.G. Allen, slightly different, but I'm pretty sure there's more blood than a G.G. Allen performance out there on this estate running down the hill. Yeah, if anybody doesn't know who G.G. Allen is, type in G.G. Allen documentary and watch it on a straight head, because you might need to like gather yourself after you've seen it.
Game of Thrones G.G. Allen would be a weird crossover fanfic.
Oh man, lie. Peter Dinklage eating his own blood-soaked stool on stage. People who don't know who G.G. Allen is, or just to tune in, will be like, why is he sitting in a broom cupboard in the shadows talking about blood stools?
Yeah, don't Google it if you don't know.
No, don't do that. But what I was talking about was like it's about like it's about space, but it's also about like how land was given or taken off people like in the olden days, and sort of for the last 1,000 years, it's roughly the same people who've had land passed down to them. Like, obviously Game of Thrones is fictional, but like watch Vikings, like if anybody's seen that. The History Channel did that, and it's kind of historically accurate, but it's about like how the Vikings interacted in Britain, but around Europe as well, and how like land was given to people to buy them off, and how they had control of land, and also the genealogy of that. So we're going to bring that into the modern day. And what we've got here is an article from The Guardian, which was a couple of years ago. Half of England is owned by less than 1% of the population. Research by author reveals corporations and aristocrats are the biggest landowners. The figures show that if land were distributed evenly across England's population, each person would have just over half an acre, an area roughly half the size of Parliament Square in central London. Now, I've got a few more that I want to go on to in a bit, but I just want to take your response to that, Alice.
It boils my piss, to be honest. This is like a really big. Honestly, I could talk about this for like about 2 hours. I will try and keep it condensed. But to me, this kind of thing of land, it's really ingrained into our psyche. And when you see how far back it goes, and you realise when you start reading about some of the acts around land and some of the historical events that happened, about how much that it's influenced every part of our lives, like even today, and it's all tied up with race, with class, with animal rights, with women's rights, like absolutely everything. Everything. And it's from stuff that happened like centuries ago, some of it. William I, after the Battle of Hastings, he took about a fifth of England for himself. And then the rest was dished out to various barons, which you've just mentioned there. He also took a lot of the land, a lot of the commons off the commoners who were relying on it for food, because he liked hunting and he liked going hunting with all of his mates, but he couldn't have the deer spooked. So he was like keeping people off the land for these for these deer parks and stuff like that. He also made changes to, like women as well, to kind of how they were treated. It was, I think there was like a dowry would be paid directly to a woman, like then. And then he was the one who brought the firstborn son stuff in. And also that when a woman got married, that both she and everything she owned basically then belonged to her husband. There as well. I could talk about this, right? Sort of 17th, 18th century. I think it was 1707 is when the first rape laws come in. Which you think, 1707, that's very progressive. But it wasn't about violence against women. That basically the victim was classed as the man who that woman belonged to.
What?
So it was like because she was seen as his property. So a man who raped another man's wife, that was like the highest invasion of that man's property is what he was seen as, and it's everything about ownership of land, of people, of absolutely everything. I'm going to shut up now. I will add more later, but otherwise I will just go on with this monologue for the next.
No, understood. And this is really interesting stuff that I don't know, and I'm enjoying hearing it. I'll bring some of this other stuff up as well, though, and then because I've got a bit of a narrative that I've put together today. So I'll just move this one on. So research in the 1970s by John Jevons and the Ecology Action Organization found that 4,000 square feet, about 370 square meters of growing space, was enough land to sustain one person on a vegetarian diet for a year, with another 4,000 square feet, 370 square meters for access paths and storage. So that's a plot around 80 feet times 100 feet. How much you can grow in this space will depend on your climate, weather, and soil, and crucially, how much time you have. 10 to 4,000 square feet, particularly at the height of the growing season, will take many hours a week. But that's roughly equivalent to 0.0918 of an acre. So, if you'll just bear with us. Half the land is owned by 1% of the people. Getting information on who owns what land is nigh on impossible. Tax arrangements favour land speculation. Ordinary people cannot get access to land to grow food. Just move that one back. What I wanted to say was, if the land that's owned by that 1% of the people is redistributed to every man, woman, and child in England. We'd all get half an acre. So if you look at like sort of the food crisis and all of this stuff that's bubbling up, which I'll touch a bit more on in a minute, we cannot feed ourselves. I can't remember when the last time England was self-sufficient, or like certainly the UK as well. So if land was redistributed fairly, then we could form cooperatives. I could grow tomatoes, you could grow cabbages, you know what I mean? And then we could just barter them and have that kind of system. But land is, in terms of access, and for people who don't know, I'm a qualified mountain leader, that kind of thing. Also, when I was younger, I liked taking mushrooms. So there was a story where me and one of the lads, right, we drove up into the countryside and we're like, oh, I'll just hop the fence. Yeah, there's mushrooms galore over there. So, you know, obviously we're committing a crime. I wouldn't suggest anybody does that now that I'm old. But it was near Slaley Forest, if anybody's interested. And within like 2 minutes, there was like a gamekeeper there and there was a cop there. And it was this was the middle of nowhere, and it was like, what are you doing? What are you doing in here? This is such and such's place. And it was like pretty much as far as the eye could see, you know, and it was like unbelievable that how quickly they were on that, you know. It was just there. And we was like, I was trying, I said, oh, just like going for a walk. Went missing because obviously we weren't going to tell the cops why we were there.
Of course.
And it's like one example of many where I've been out in the countryside and even access to sort of recreation is just stopped. And the reason I'm focusing on England is in Scotland they have a right to roam law, so it's not quite the same. So I thought I'd focus this on England. So apologies to people who are outside of England. In fact, actually, the biggest landowner in the UK is somebody called the Duke of Buccleuch. I can't even pronounce it, Buccleuch or whatever it is. And he's a Scottish landowner. He's got 2 big estates in the Scottish borders. He's got a big one down in Northamptonshire as well. One of the things we touched on earlier also is that it's virtually impossible because of all these titles that have went on for years and like centuries to actually find out exactly who owns what, because there's no legal necessity for that to be declared, like some of it on the land registry. So it could be a hell of a lot more than this.
Yeah,
probably is.
And they'll say, you know, can you see these signs saying no trespassing and stuff? And, you know, a lot of people are really unclear on what the law is around that. It's probably not as strict as what you might think it is. There's a really good book that I do recommend to anybody called The Book of Trespass by Nick Hayes, who is really well researched. He kind of goes into all of this, you know, kind of talks about the history, all of these different acts and kind of how they impact us today. Throughout the book as well, he also goes to a lot of these states, and that guy who you've just mentioned is mentioned in it as well.
Is he?
And he deliberately trespasses on all of these like kind of different properties and kind of writes about what happened, but tells you about the history of it as well. And one of the things as the book progresses, you know, it's in different sections. It's about kind of trespassing in, you know, kind of property in respects to, as I say, like women's rights, and you know, it talks about the empire and colonialism and everything like that. And it kind of all ties together. And you just mentioned this earlier at the beginning, is you hear that, you know, even though he's going back to like feudal times to modern day, you hear the same names over and over again, the same family names who have hoarded, and that's what it is, who've hoarded this land or outright stolen it, outright killed people for you know, restricted, not, you know, it's even in terms of like the way we're allowed to work and everything like that, and how it's still in our psyche now. You know, you had like the Edward III, you know, when he was you know, going on about about vagrants and about the Roma and traveling communities as well. You know, a lot of that, you know, what that was about in Tudor times was about, you know, people were moving from manor to manor, you know, so they might go and work for, you know, decide they've been really badly treated by one lord of the manor, but, you know, the one a few miles away probably won't treat them as badly, so goes to work for them. And, that was resulting in, kind of battles between the gentry and, more land being seized. So they were basically just like stopping people from being able to do that. So like with the who they called the vagrants, the people who were just like moving from place to place looking for better work. It was, if they were begging, it was that idea of, if somebody's not working, that they're deemed fit to, then you shouldn't be giving them charity. That idea of the deserving poor, which is still with us today. If you look at Benefit Street, if you look at the way different refugees from different places, are being
we're going to have to do a big thing on follow up to that, aren't we?
At the moment, yeah, all of that. And obviously with traveling people as well, it's, that's when they were saying about, the Roma people, that they'll put curses on you, that they're, they're bringing crime and everything. They're still talked about like that to this day. And it was because it was people who were living nomadically was a threat to them. And that's what it was. Yeah. Can you see I'm angry about this when we get
You've got every right to be, and like that's interesting. I didn't know that the prejudice towards like traveling people goes like way back to then.
And it won't be the only thing, that kind of is led to that sort of prejudice, but it's, the policies that were put in place and everything did have a big impact, and they still do. I'm not saying there wasn't other things at play there. That absolutely was. And, I've mentioned William I there, he wasn't the first, he wasn't the last person who put in horrific, restrictions on people or seized land. He wasn't. And some of the, names that you hear, they're in living memory. We're not talking about, kind of kings and lords from centuries ago. Some of them are still alive today, really. But yeah, it's a really, really interesting book. I highly recommend. And you realise as well in England as well how restrictive it is. Exactly what you said about Scotland and Sweden and things like that. I've got different laws. About right to roam and that. It's really, really deep seated in English culture, I think.
True story, mate. Right, I'm just gonna throw a little bit up here on the screen. So it says, food crisis looms as Ukrainian wheat shipments grind to a halt. Prices soars, Black Sea ports at virtual standstill amid Russian assault. That's this from the Financial Times. Ukraine and Russia account for about 30% of the world's traded wheat and still have crops from last year to ship. There is no end in sight to the upswing because 30% of the world's wheat exports have been cut off from the global market, said Carsten Frich, analyst at Commerzbank. Wheat traded in Chicago, the international benchmark, has jumped more than 50% since Russia invaded Ukraine. Prices rose to as high as $13.40 a bushel on Friday, while European milling wheat in Paris hit a record of €406 per ton. So you can see what my narrative is. I've got another one to bring in a little bit about like how the Mail are reporting sort of things around land in a minute. But the narrative I'm putting together is, if we got, I'm not saying we're all going to get half an acre, but we don't need half an acre. We don't need like close to that to feed a family of four, like on a vegetarian diet for a year. I think the problem is capitalism just doesn't like allow for people. I mean, have you ever tried to get an allotment?
I'm on a 5-year waiting list.
Exactly. And I don't know if the law still exists, but I'm paraphrasing. But there was a law passed where people like had a right to an allotment or a place to grow it or whatever. But I don't think it's been enforced. Like, excuse me. A little bit of something going on there. Maybe it's a Gigi Allen poo coming back on us. But sorry about that, everybody. Apologies. Just think of a mushroom growing on top of it and it'll all be better. It's coming back. Right, reminds us what I was talking about. All I can think about is Gigi Allen now.
Oh, God.
So what I've been saying is like, if we had like if councils were like setting up allotments, people had means to grow for themselves, we had means to barter and give food, that would obviously be a problem for capitalism because people wouldn't be buying from capitalist enterprises and large supermarket chains as much, because the things that people grow would be better. You know, it would be like quite often organic, it would be like small scale, and it would be local as well. So the food miles would be incredibly low. That would be great for the environment. It's just another example about how capitalism is basically anti-environment, you know. And we'll do a little bit on the energy crisis in a bit as well, like before we do positive news. And I'm just like perplexed as to like how long do the people at the top of society think this can go on. Like we're looking at that like the wheat crisis, and about how the Russia-Ukraine war that has like something like 30-35% of the world's wheat exports. And analysts are really worried about what that'll do, because wheat's in a lot of things other than just bread. There's talk of like bread going up 2-3 times for like in price for a loaf because of it. But like I'm gluten intolerant, and I was before it was cool. I actually have an allergy, and so I'm really keenly aware of like what how wheat is used. It's used as a thickener. It's used in so many different things. If you look at the back of like packets of random stuff, just look at the things in bold. Quite often you'll find wheat.
Yeah.
But you'll also find like barley malt vinegar, something that like is also got gluten in. You know, so the problem there is it's like what is then going to be used for all these different products, and how much is that going to put the price up? And how much price gouging in the international market is there going to be? And it's already at record prices. And the analysts don't actually know, because nobody really knows what's going on in the Ukraine and elsewhere, like the Black Sea wheat resources, as to how this is going to affect the like global food chain. And this obviously speaks to, you know, stuff that we were involved in campaigns around globalization when we were younger, and we were called like stupid hippies and that kind of thing, because we were warning against like outsourcing things on a global level. Now I get you've got to have a level of globalization to have the kind of like varied diet that we do have. I understand that, but like the staples and whatnot just aren't being grown to the level of the population density that we have, which I think something like 65.7 million in the UK. Like people that are registered to live here. That was at the last census. I mean, we're waiting on the results of the census that was done during the like COVID pandemic. That's as late as the Ford report, I think. So we've got a problem, and we already had a problem in terms of cost of living. For people who didn't hear it or watch it, go back to the cost of living crisis explainer we did the other week. We'll be doing a follow up on that as well.
Yeah.
What do you think of this? Because it's a real issue as far as I'm concerned, and I'm more than a bit concerned about what could happen.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, can you question earlier about what do the people who have all this land think of it? I don't think they think of it at all. Because again, it is all about hoarding wealth, and actually they're going to be the last people who are going to be badly affected by these things. But it's having an impact. It's having an impact on absolutely everything. It has been for years. It has been the way we use land, you know, in terms of kind of how much is allocated for raising cattle and stuff and things like that, living spaces, all of the rest of it, quality of housing as well, because it's, you know, then you're bringing in like property and landlords and stuff and things like that, which again has an impact on our health. You know, housing is health, and you know, so is access to the very basics, like food, like water. I think something like 95 or 97% of our walkways are kind of, we don't have access to in this, you know, in England as well.
Gigi Allen would be pleased at what's floating around in a lot of the rivers now.
Like, you know, it's like, you know, they'll find a way to commodify every single thing, and that's how it has been for centuries, you know, when there were kind of poaching laws and stuff and things like that, and taking the commons away, because, you know, a pheasant to a poor man was food, but to a rich man it was sport.
That's the thing. It's about use of land, it's about control of land, but it's also about how it's used too. You know, I mentioned like Slaley earlier about where we got copped for the mushroom incident. One of the many in my youth, actually. And it's pheasant central round there, and a lot of that land you just cannot access, you know. And also like if people wanted to go and hunt them for food, well, you can't. That's not something you can go and do without like permits, permissions. Like it's very expensive.
Yeah.
You know, it's so expensive that like you're better off going to Cranston's and Hexham, the butcher, and buying one. And even that's mad expensive. You know what I mean? Sorry, dog tablet alarm's going off once again. Still haven't stopped it. So it's a real problem, and it's a problem that we can't solve on this particular show, but I think it's something that we will return to in the future. I just want to move on to do like a quick thing on the energy bills. And then obviously I've got a little video to play out for positive news because I think we need it. I'll just pull this up for you. So this is from Richard Murphy, who is an economic justice campaigner, professor of accounting practice at Sheffield University, a chartered accountant, political economist, and co-founder of the Green New Deal. So he's done a really long thread, and I've just cherry-picked quite a lot, well, some of what he's trying to say, just for the purposes of time. But if you want to know more, go to @RichardJMurphy on Twitter. Suggest you read the thread and find out more about what we're about to talk about. So he puts up a table for listeners here. So he says, let's summarize where we are on this table. So he's talking about like the overall energy cost, and that was in 2021 to 22, and that's to now. So overall energy cost for a household around about £1,200. To come 2022 to 2023, £3,000. So he's got, I'll not go through each individual figure which he breaks down, but he's got in red there, profit made by energy production company was £43, and that's per household. It's about to go up to £1,717. So moving on. So he notes that the electricity and gas suppliers to the distribution companies are going to see their profits increase almost exactly 40 times, from £43 a year to an extraordinary £1,717 a year. He also says, to put this in context, estimate that the price of UK energy is going to increase by 38 billion. That increase will be split between the government, 1.9 billion, the energy distribution companies, 760 million, and oil and generation companies, 35.34 billion. So in plain straightforward terms, that is profiteering, or exploitation, if you like, on a quite staggering scale. Brexit is the excuse for some, COVID was the excuse for more, and now the war in Ukraine is being used as an excuse for the biggest rip-off of all time.
Yeah.
So people are talking, like, have you seen the narrative that's been put out at the moment where it's like, turn your heating off for a Ukrainian child? Like that it's not about that. What it's about is, as Richard Murphy quite rightly says there, and he's qualified to say so, by the way, it's a rip-off. It's using never let a good crisis go to waste, and that seems to be the guiding, like, immoral principle of this government. Now, Boris Johnson in the last 24 hours, I believe, has met with what they call like energy industry leaders, and I guarantee you this: like, he's not been like going to bat for us and trying to bring those prices down. You know, we've said this before on the show. In France, EDF Energy is state-owned. The French government have capped any price rises to 4%. In this country, EDF operate also, and their prices went up 54% because there's no equivalent government regulations. Alice, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think he's not going to be going to bat for us, is he? You know, they'll be waiting for him with some bottles of champagne and a picnic basket, and kind of sit down, Mr. Johnson. Let us massage your shoulders. I mean, we could do another show about lobbyists as well, and
I think we will. I mean, an hour is just never enough every week, is it? So I think as everything grows, the Patreon grows, and all that, we'll be able to afford the time to do it.
It's all connected. It'll be. You'll probably, they're the kind of people who could light candles with £50 notes. He was part of the Bullingdon Club. One of their rituals was to set fire to money in front of homeless people. I really don't think he's going to give a pixie's chuff about what happens to the people living in the UK. It's about how is he going to benefit from it? How is it going to help keep the same people keep the reins of power? That's how it always works. It's up to the rest of us to, you know, to try and do something about it. Because that is not sustainable. That is, you know, you look at those figures, see side by side, and it makes you want to vomit. It just makes like with rage. It's sickening and it's repulsive.
It really, really is. I'm going to just pull up some quick comments here. Guy Robert, Sarnie off the Team Valley Scran van was £2.80 a fortnight ago. Now £3. Cheers, warmongers. He goes on to say, well, he would if it would come up on the screen. Can we go back to the bit where the Karens were all fighting over bog roll and we had to stay in? I'm feeling nostalgic. Yes, that was a better time. Also, heating oil for rural people was absolutely rock bottom because there was a surplus. Just on the oil thing, I read this. Johnson's going to go and see the Saudis or has something booked in. I may even went. I don't know. And basically, all of these price rises are in anticipation of there being a supply shortage. I mean, Germany, for example, I think it's something like 41% of their energy requirements are like oil and gas from Russia, and they've said they can't turn it off. If they were to turn it off now, it would plunge people into poverty. Those pipelines are still rolling in. Like people are still like Germany is in a sense funding the war effort in Ukraine, and they can't stop it. And this is the things that we've been talking about for 20 years or more about globalization. Another example is like EDF and the Chinese state having a half share in a nuclear power plant. I don't know if it's been built yet or whatever. I didn't keep following it, on the south coast of England. So there's all this talk about like the Red Menace and China this, China that. Well, you're allowing effectively a static nuclear bomb on the south coast of the country, and again, it's this unfettered capitalism at the top of society where they're just being allowed to get on with it, you know. And it's absolutely, there's so many different things we could have talked about in this show, but I'm really conscious of time, and I think we should probably like jarringly cut at this point.
Yeah.
Know what I'm saying? So I'll take a couple of comments before we move on. FCK PTN, is Mike's house further up the hill than Alice's and thus sitting higher on the screen? No, I'm taller and I've got this like really mental, like rudimentary setup going on because obviously, as I mentioned earlier, me moving plans had to be put back a week. So my arse is killing because I'm sitting on this mad stool that you can't adjust. So
no, I did actually notice that earlier on.
I'm just like looking properly up, yeah, like in shadow, like properly, like looking like a nonce and that.
I know I'm a lot shorter than you, but it does look a bit ridiculous.
It does, proper little enlarged business and all of that. There was another comment a bit further up that I'm going to try and find because I was like trying not to laugh when I was reading it, and there's been so many since there. Oh, here we go. I found it. Brendan says more drugs and poo and a GG experience too. Just wanted to get that one in before we left. Cheers for that, man. All the very bloody best here. Also, Jez is here, and he said he made some belts for Vikings. Jez, I want to see pictures of this because my partner and I loved watching Vikings. We just finished it. Also, did you do any for Vikings Valhalla? Because this is no aspersion on your work, but Vikings Valhalla is like if you would order Vikings off Wish, it's like just not as good. Bring back Lagertha and Ragnar Lothbrok. I mean, I know the sagas were written, but just change it for me because I want them back. Bit of a niche thing. If anybody's not watched Vikings, go and watch it. It's absolutely mint, especially if you're from like Northumberland and Northeast, because they're like, you know, the river up towards Hexham and that.
Yeah.
Like they go up towards that. They like fight the Northumbrian king, and it's just mint. Yeah. They attack Lindisfarne. Get it done. Also, watch one of the Jarls get blood eagled. If you don't know what that is, Google blood eagling. Blood eagle. We need the palate cleanser. That is positive news to play without. And I'm just going to pull it up. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit for the audio listeners. I'll have to describe what's about to happen because it's not in English. There's a video that I saw the other day, and it warms me heart. A horse is drowning and it's
sound like a good story.
No, listen. Palestinians and Israelis like spring to it and start working together, and they save the horse. So I'm going to show the video and we'll come back. Now that video is a lot longer than that, and I've like cut it to the business end. It's like honestly, I watched the whole thing and I was just like overcome with it, because obviously you see a lot more of the context as well. People just come rushing and they just start working together and they start helping each other. And I just think it's more grist to the mill of like, you know, sometimes crises can be bad, but also sometimes crises can bring people together. And you know, the people that are running the world don't let a good crisis go to waste for nefarious ends. But we shouldn't let a good crisis go to waste for spreading positivity and trying to bring people together, which, you know, is what we've always tried to do. I mean, for example, I'm a giant and you're a little person, and we've come together to talk about the matters of the day.
I'm even smaller than Voltaire just
we'll have it all sorted for next week, because we'll have a proper setup on the go, and we'll both be on the same level. So
no, that was nice when you first started talking about it. I was getting flashbacks of the never-ending story when I was a kid, and I was like, "Oh, attack!" like sinking in the swamp, like them. Now I love how they all kind of like gathered around it, and they were all like trying to check it out and try and reassure it afterwards when they got it out, and that was canny.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, animals are brilliant. Like animals are a lovely, lovely thing. So I just wanted to like show that vid. And I mean, obviously we know the conflict over there is horrific, and it's not given the time of day that it should be. Especially like, I mean, I can't even go into this now. We're gonna have to do a whole comparator on Yemen, Israel, Palestine, and the Ukraine, and how people are receiving this and how it's being reported. But before we do that, like obviously I wanted to show that video, because as I say, it shows that when people come together, great things can occur. Lives can be saved, and they can do it. So can we. And that's my snarf ending.
I was about to say that is definitely a snarf ending. So
I took the Orko baton on because I recognised I dropped you right in the clarts last week, so I thought I'll be Orko. I won't put you in that kind of world. Also, thank you to everybody for tuning in this week in our ghetto rudimentary last couple of weeks, which I'll look back on with great fondness in the future when we've got like green screens and all manner of shit going up. But in the meantime, it's been a nice blast from the past. Nice to show you something that's probably 40 years old, which is the C.S. Lewis Narnia box set. Might even do like a giveaway on this in the future if I'm feeling it, you know what I mean? It's a nice lovely thing. Cool, man. Somebody just popped up, Pat Nick. Damn, just missed, sorry, but thanks for the chat. 7:00 every week, mate, my friend. YouTube is your friend on that one, but thanks for dropping in on that one. Joanne G is saying thanks for the show, dudes. Cheers, mate, appreciate it. Jez Hunt, I know I didn't work on Valhalla. I think it would have improved the show, Jez, to be quite honest with you. Watch the 6 seasons of the original Vikings and sack off Valhalla. Thanks to you, Alice, as ever. And yes, I will give you a shout later in the week, and we shall laugh at how crazy this is. Also, just an update on the estate. It's deathly quiet, and that's often, in my experience, a really bad sign, especially after kick-off. So if anything goes on, then that's actually Guy Roberts just popped up with a belter. Utter Dafty. No, that wasn't the one. It was something else. I sold my Narnia box set for tack money when I was a young'un. For people who aren't from the Northeast, tack is basically like this old sort of sub or hashish. We used to call it soldiers' heeds, and you know them little green soldiers that you could get. They used to pad it out with plastics and all kinds of stuff. And like I once found like a green soldier's heed in. Actually, no, I didn't. I've never smoked tack in my life. Anyway, moving on. Thanks. Please comment, rate, and subscribe and all that. I've never smoked tack in my life. Never in a million years. Found my old Snoop Dogg G pen.
Just say no, kids.
Just, you know, that'll be a lot less loosey-goosey in the future. But I'm telling you, that you wouldn't get Nick Robinson, who we're coming for in the podcast chart, once I actually get to sit down and bloody edit. But in the meantime, actually, I'll tell you a story. We were driving back from like our failed ferry mission the other night, and we're listening to Radio 4, and it was just like, oh, this is shit. It's such like a mad range of opinions and all of that. And we're like, it said at the end when he did his outro, oh, this is any questions on Radio 4? And I was like, shit, we were above them in the podcast charts. Like before, like, you know, before we moved, I was like, holy shit. And it was like some like live show with Caroline Lucas and Lord Ponsonby Smythe and Lord Adonis and all this. I was like, what must their budget be like? And they still can't beat the plucky young upstarts from the hood. Fuck off.
Young.
I'm having that, right? You can't take that away from us, right? I've got a 40-year-old Narnia box set next to us. Like, you can't. Totally, dude. But anyway, thank you. We've ran over a little bit tonight, but it's just one of them, innit? And thanks for your time, mate, as always. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. If you could as well, if you are watching this after the fact, if you'd like the YouTube video, leave a nice comment on there. It just helps with the algorithms and all of that cool stuff. And share it with your friends as well. That would be a really nice thing. Also, you can catch it on Spotify, which links are in the description, and also Apple Podcasts. If you give it a nice 5-star review on both of those, that's massively helpful, because once I get in this new place next week, we're going on a big assault on those charts, because honestly, the quality, the output was really pissing us off when I was listening to it on the car radio the other day. Love every single one of you. Bye now, everybody. I'm just going to do some filler until I find the closing title, which, oh yeah. Bye, Alice. Bye, everybody. See you.